Well, this wonderful appearance of Jesus to his disciples has an interesting line in it. They, being the apostles, were startled and terrified and thought that they were seeing a ghost. Why would they think they were seeing a ghost? And where does this come from? And of course, what does that have to do with us today? Well, back in Jesus' day, throughout the entire Roman Empire, there was a particular philosophy that many, not all, but many people had, called Gnosticism. Gnosticism is one of those words that begins with a G, but the G is silent. Gnosticism. And Gnosticism can best be described as the belief that the world is corrupt. The world is awful. The world is filled with sin. And that didn't take very hard to convince people that it was true, because a lot of people, suffered in Roman times. There was an awful lot of slavery. There was an awful lot of conquering. There was a lot of Roman persecution. And at the end of the day, of course, people were put to death in a horrible way by crucifixion. And they were way overtaxed. So you could say, yeah, the world's a lousy place. But Gnosticism goes farther. Gnosticism then says, well, the world is so corrupt that any God that you might believe in, no matter where that God is, if that God comes into this world, they will be corrupted by this world. That the world will corrupt any deity entering this world. And that deity can no longer be a deity. The explanation that they'd use many examples. They'd cite the Greek and Roman gods. Every time they entered the world, they were doing all kinds of crazy things involving killing and sadness and pain and like that. And they hurt a lot of people. They say, see, the world corrupted every god you believed in. So any real God is not going to be on this earth. They wouldn't come in, because a real God would know that the world would corrupt. That's Gnosticism. And unfortunately, many Jewish people were exposed to Gnosticism and began to believe that, well, that might be true. After all, we thought that Jesus might be the Son of God, and look what happened to him. He died on the cross in a horrible death. So maybe this is the way it is, that God is always going to be removed from us and is never going to be with us. He won't dare to enter this corrupt world. However, the opposite is true. Jesus came into this world, and yes, he suffered greatly, but he overcame this world. He overcame the world and rose again. And he's walking not as a projection, not as a ghost, not as something in the world that isn't real. He's very real. And he wants the apostles to know how very real he is. And so he says, touch me. I have flesh. I have bones. He even says, give me something to eat. He wants to make it perfectly clear that, yes, the world's corrupt. The world's sinful. But a God who loves the people in this world will enter into that corruption, will undergo the worst corruption the world can offer, like the cross, overcome it, and open his love out to all who are willing to follow him, so that they too, despite the corruption of the world, can see through God's love the opportunity for salvation. That's what's going on here. It's very powerful. Because by realizing that Jesus is really risen from the dead, means that the corruption of the world had not prevailed and will not prevail if you put your faith in the Lord. Everybody here has things that tempt them, that trouble them, struggles they're dealing with of all kinds, from economic to medical. Everyone has crosses to bear. And Jesus himself bore his cross. But this Jesus is very real. And we must never forget that because we have received him into our lives, he's walking there with us through all of the trials and tribulations of this world. So that as we walk with him, we will walk through this world. And not that we won't suffer too. He never said we will spare our sufferings. But if we bear our cross knowing that Jesus is with us all the way, then we will overcome anything that this world throws at us. We will overcome it on the way to the heavenly kingdom. This real Jesus, this very real Jesus, is the very real Jesus that loves every one of us and wants to walk with every one of us through our life in this world. Because at the end of the day, when Jesus comes again, all corruption will be disappeared. And as the scripture says in the very first verses of the Bible, God created the world and it was good. But we will achieve that goodness only through holding fast to the Lord and walking with Him every step of our life.